Brothers and sisters, we've all turned up the radio to hear Brother Jimmy Lakey, from coast to coast and shore to shore. Now raise your voice. Oh, let us all Jimmy Lakey get out of bed. Jimmy Lakey, raise your voice. Jimmy Lakey, hey, can't live without it with Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey.
Well, good morning from the House of Lakey. Top of the morning to you. Glad to have you here. Lakey, Jimmy Lakey is my name, to be precise. Pleasured, pleased, and I'm thrilled to be here. Lakey Unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. And here we are on a streamcast. Let's create a new word, streamcast. And here we are live this morning all across America. And according to the numbers, we're also, ladies and gentlemen, all across the world. Hello, India. Hello, Germany. Everybody out there, please, thanks for being a part of the program. I want to remind you, as you see the show, like and share it. When you share it, use the hashtag Lakey Unleashed, especially you out there on the Twitter feed. And hey, I know it's not streaming on the Rumble. It is streaming on the Rumble. It is also not on the Truth Social, but if you're on the Truth Social, take the Rumble link, put it up on Truth Social, and tell all your friends on Rumble to like and join us here live every morning. If you're new to the show, you do know all of the platforms we're on. Good morning to all the Facebook feeds we're on, many of those. Twitter, or X, we're supposed to call that. Rumble even has a place. You can comment live, and we do get those right here into the broadcast studio, the podcast studio, the streamcast studio, and we do get to see all of those, and we'll pop them up on the screen. So good morning. Lots of great stuff to get into today. Going to talk about Special Counsel Weiss blasting Joe Biden for the pardoning of Hunter. Special Counsel Jack Smith out there. He's trying to shame Donald Trump before he goes into office next week. We're 6 days away. 6 days, my friends. The countdown is on. Only 6 days away until we're free, until we're burdened from what has been. We're unburdened from what has been in the White House, and that's going to be a very special and a very happy day. All right, we got a lot of good things to talk about, and one of the things I guess we should talk about is there's a couple of lead stories out there. First of all, Pete Hegseth is right now, his confirmation hearing has begun. He has not said anything. It's all the senators and participants, witnesses pontificating and saying all sorts of stuff. So Pete is just sitting there listening to everyone speak and jabber, and that's going to take a while. If there's anything that develops in that, we shall see how that goes, but it's not looking like it's going to be it's going to be a while before they let Pete Hegseth actually say something. So that will be very, very interesting. David Weiss is the special counsel that was investigating Hunter Biden, and he blasted in a final report from his special counsel office. He said it's highly anticipated, and he said it was awful, absolutely awful that the president decided to pardon Hunter Biden. He says, and also not only did he pardon Hunter Biden, but he slammed the Justice Department. He said the commander-in-chief's characterizations of the probe into his son, that they were wrong and unfairly maligned the Justice Department officials, while admitting that the president's department made it inappropriate for him to discuss whether or not additional charges against the first son were warranted. First, Fox News Digital obtained a copy of the final Weiss report after his years-long investigation into Hunter Biden, and the Justice Department transmitted the report to Congress on Monday evening. Weiss said that it was just the full and unconditional pardon makes it hard for him to comment more, but he says that Joe Biden was wrong and unfair by condemning the Justice Department. Now, anybody who thinks, and a lot of people on the left did buy into the topic and narrative, that Joe Biden, or that the Justice Department was prosecuting some political prosecution against Hunter Biden and these rogue people in the Department of Justice. Let me ask you this question. If they were really rogue people in the Department of Justice, why didn't Joe Biden, when he pardoned his son, why didn't he fire any of them? He has the authority to do that. If Joe Biden really believes any of his hyperbolic accusations that he made from his demented mouth to his from his demented mind to his demented mouth, if Joe Biden really believes any of that, why didn't he fire someone from the Department of Justice? The Democrats have this problem, and their mouth speaks very hyperbolic language, very fear-based language. They're just many times just awful kind of people. And they say these things, and then they really don't mean them. Joe Biden says, hey, you're going to have to, the Department of Justice prosecuted my son unfairly, unjustly, and doggone it, that they're bad people, right? Well, no, they're not bad people, because if they were really bad people and they were really rogue, you would have fired them. Remember what Barack Obama would say about Donald Trump? He would say things about Donald Trump like, he's Hitler, he's a tyrant, he's a threat to democracy. And it's all hyperbole. You get to the funeral and they sit there and yuck it up and have a fun conversation. And so I think you need to understand that when a Democrat fear is a great motivator. And when a Democrat is out there trying to get you to walk in fear and trepidation, usually about an individual, when they're trying to get you to walk in that fear and trepidation, you might want to realize maybe they're trying to manipulate you. When Joe Biden goes after and pardons his son, which again, I'll say this, I probably would have pardoned my son. I don't argue with the father's heart that if you have that power, which most of us never will have that power, if you have that power, you would probably use it. I think a lot of us would admit to that. So I don't fault the pardon. Wasn't even surprised by the pardon, but to attack the Justice Department and then do nothing about the Justice Department for being evil, like you said it was evil, it just shows that when you're speaking, we just can't trust you, and that you're just trying to spin a narrative and justify your actions. In the same way they talked about Donald J. Trump for many, many years about him being a threat to democracy. But you got Barack Obama out there yucking it up at the inauguration. You got Joe Biden when they tried to assassinate the threat to democracy. You got Joe Biden calling him, making sure he's okay. They don't really mean it. All they're trying to do is manipulate their ilk, manipulate their following, and continue to have their following walk in fear and trepidation of what the other side represents here. All right, welcome into the House of Lakey. Good to have you here. This is our live daily update. The crowd grows throughout the morning. This is the Unleashed streamcast, if you will. We have another part of Lakey Unleashed, and we call it Unleashed because I have been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. And after 10 years with the iHeart Kingdom and many years with Cumulus and Salem, I've done all of them. I decided I'm not doing it again. We're gonna make it fly. We'll make it fly on my own. So there's exclusive content at the patreon.com page, patreon.com. This obviously is free. You haven't paid a nickel for it. You're just sitting there in your underpants, or maybe you're sitting there at your cubicle. However, you're sitting there somewhere. Maybe you're streaming at your car. I know one of our friends works at an airport, and he says he just listens to it, and sometimes he misses out on stuff because there's a lot of visuals here. But and of course, you do miss out looking at me. That's beautiful to see right there. But he listens to it kind of like it's just a radio show in his ears. But anyway, however you listen to the program, glad to have you. This is all free for you. But the podcast, or the Patreon page, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. I'd love to have you there. It's free. It's free for the most part, unless you want the good stuff. The real good stuff is behind a paywall. And I'll place for you a snippet that a lot of folks responded to me yesterday of a gentleman named Leighton Gray. It was a fantastic conversation. Everything you ever thought about, wanted to know about Canada, it's really good. And it's $9.95 a month if you choose. You do a 7-day free trial. It's free for the most part. If you want to go deeper, you can do the $9.95 a month. It's 7-day free trial. If you don't like it, just cancel before they charge you, and boom, it's a beautiful thing. All right, let me walk him in. He's in the virtual green room a little bit early, so let's just not make him wait any longer. He, like me, realizes the power of broadcast and podcast and streamcast. He's the host of The Bill Walton Show. He's known as the Unwoke CEO. He chairs the Resolute Protector Foundation, which is a 501c3 media production company that creates and produces original educational and entertainment content. I bring him into the conversation. His name is Bill Walton. He's been a friend of mine, friend of the show when I was on the terrestrial radio signal, but now he's joining us here on the Lakey Unleashed podcast or streamcast. Bill, welcome in, sir.
Great talking with you.
Good to have you. Good morning to you. Let me ask you this question. I want to talk about the fires in California a little bit, but I'm sure you've followed this this Weiss condemnation of Biden, and said you wrongly and unfairly classified the Department of Justice as evil, and yet you didn't fire anyone, so I guess we weren't evil. You have they called Donald Trump a threat to democracy or Hitler, and yet they yuck it up with him and wish him well when he gets shot. What is it about the American left that likes to speak in hyperbole, and yet they don't really mean it?
Well, if they'd spoken anything else, they wouldn't have anything to say at all. This is just one of a piece. I'm not up to speed with his most recent statement, but we do know that Joe is trying to build some protective barriers around his presidency. He in the last week, he's been out doing some fairly egregious things. And I think even this pardon of Hunter Biden, I don't think is going to stand. I think there's going to be some chinks in that armor. And we all know that since he issued that pardon, we expect that Hunter's already engaged in a few felonies since then. I mean, I don't think he's given up his habits. So it's, stay tuned. I think we've got a new sheriff in town at the Justice Department, and we're likely to see a lot of things come out that we hadn't heard about before. At least that's my hope. And I think Pan Biondi has that in mind. And once the American people get to see it, I think Joe and everything else he's done with all his pardons will be shown in a pretty harsh light.
It's just going to go to the Supreme Court, these preemptive pardons here. It's really bizarre that we haven't, nobody's accused you or charged you with a crime, but hey, just in case they do, you're exempt from that. That's a dangerous thing if that stands in the American justice system.
Well, I hope so. It goes to the Supreme Court, and I hope the Supreme Court, pardon the term, mans up and actually does the right thing here, because if we can set a precedent where you're in office and then you can exempt everybody who ever worked for you from future prosecution, or not future prosecution based on things yet to be done. I mean, we've entered into some sort of bizarro world legal system that can't stand. And I do think we've got some grown-ups riding into town, and hopefully we'll get that set straight.
Question of the day for all my viewers out there and listeners, our question of the day: who else do you think that Joe Biden will pardon? Pretend you have a pardon bingo card, and who you're going to put on the bingo card. Question of the day. Put it on all the platforms out there, whether you're on Facebook, Rumble, whether you're on the YouTube, the X, however you're listening to us on this program. Who else do you think will be on the Biden bingo card when it comes to pardons? Let us know. We'll chime in on some of those here in just a bit. But I've got Bill Walton. He has a show called The Bill Walton Show. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Let me ask you this question about grown-ups in the room. Grown-ups have not been in the room, it seems, in California. We have millions, if not billions of dollars wasted on illegals, millions of gallons of water flushed out to the Pacific that could have filled reservoirs down south. And now we have a story of an illegal immigrant that was setting fires with a blowtorch in Los Angeles, and he's likely to be released because the California sanctuary state laws say that they can't hand him over to ICE, basically. We have the same laws here in Colorado where I live.
Did you hear what his plan, what he said he was doing with the blowtorch?
No, I didn't hear that.
He said he was using it to light a joint.
Well,
that must have been quite a joint. But to add, the ultimate insult to this injury, the California legislature met either yesterday or day before and voted $50 million to combat the Trump administration, $25 million for the California Justice Department to litigate against the Trump administration. The other $25 million was to stop the deportation of illegal immigrants. And we all know Los Angeles is a sanctuary city, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I think the number of homeless in Los Angeles has risen to almost 40% in the 6 years that Gavin Newsom has been governor, and I'm not sure what the record is with the mayor, but it's it's a big thing, and they're spending much more on homeless and illegal immigrants than they have on fire prevention. I mean, by order of magnitude of $2 to $3 to 1. And so, yeah, this is, talk about misplaced priorities. This is Exhibit A.
Delilah, who was here, just sent me a note. She looked it up real quick. Within the city of Los Angeles alone, specifically, city of Los Angeles, there are 45,252 homeless individuals.
Yeah.
That's a city in and of itself, and they're spending billions on that. And yet, again, fire prevention, fire mitigation, all because they deny that they were trying to protect the smelt fish or the bunny rabbits and not clearing the underbrush. And yet you can go back in history and go, don't gaslight me. You actually said that, and that's actually why you had the policies in place.
Well, I want to get this statistic out there because it's been around, but I think your listeners ought to hear it. When California was discovered around 1600, something like that, 1650, the sailor that came into the port of Los Angeles called it the city of smoke, or the port of smoke, and that was because of the wildfires. And they estimate that some 4.5 million acres of California burned every year just naturally. And so this thing has been a tinderbox for thousands of years. When we came in, we settled it, we civilized it, we brought modern techniques to bear on how to prevent wildfires. Only 450,000 acres of wildfires occurred around the year 1990, 2000. In other words, through water management, forest management, cutting brush, knowing where to put electrical wires, keeping the reservoirs full, things like that, we dramatically reduced the incidence of wildfire. And yet when the liberals took over California, they shut all those programs down. And now I think there was something like 4 million square acres or acres of wildfires in California just a couple of years ago. So, these things are all of a piece. I mean, they're misplaced priorities. They didn't think they'd have to pay a price for it, and we've now got a tinderbox there. Prediction: we're going to be seeing the homeless people try to move in to those abandoned lots or those charred lots in the Palisades. The views are great. They're going to want that space.
And knowing Gavin Newsom and the liberals, they may say, "Well, we can't stop that." They may surrender that.
Precisely.
It's really just bizarre to have it on such display that the Democrats of California, and this happens, of course, nationwide, they prioritize they prioritize their agenda more than they do the people that they represent. Their Green New Deal, their environmentalist radicalism, they prioritize that above people. This is on full display, and yet will this wake the people of California up to say, maybe we've been voting for idiots?
Well, Pacific Palisades voted 3-1 for Kamala Harris, and I think even by a bigger margin for Gavin Newsom. So, they voted for what they're getting, and I don't know what the numbers were for the mayor, but they were similar. So the people who did that have got to be thinking, what were we thinking? And this reflexive, white guilt, the genuflecting towards DEI and illegal immigration, sanctuary city. They got to bring that to an end, or else Los Angeles is never going to recover. There's some thought that the entire I think the entire political class of California ought to be ousted, but I still don't know whether they've got the votes. Most of the people that would lead that, I think, have left the state, and that's the other problem. We're seeing a brain drain in California, a talent drain. Businesses have left, and so the kind of leaders you'd get. Remember Ronald Reagan was governor of California. I think those type conservatives, I think, are still in the pretty distinct minority post, during the Gavin Newsom era.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago in my lifetime. I remember Gray Davis was there. I mean, you had some moderate, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, and suddenly, all of a sudden, to hell in a handbasket they go, and it gets crazy, crazy, crazy.
Well, don't let Arnold off the hook. Arnold was pretty bad on all the environmental stuff. He was a big time smelt protector.
Yeah. Those smelt burning down the state is what they're doing, and hopefully it'll wake up. The smelt have a lot of power. The smelt have become arsonists of their own. It was said there that you can say fire is an act of God, but the reason this act of God got out of control is because of an act of stupidity by politicians and people in California. It's really more of an act of stupidity that brought the destruction than act of God.
Well, and there's the mayor's reaction to this is, we're going to find out what happened. Well, the right thing for her to be doing now, or anybody who's a proactive leader, ought to be, okay, this has happened. What do we do next? And the cleanup is massive. And as I understand it, they have nobody in charge of thinking about a cleanup in Los Angeles so far. They haven't thought about what the insurance problems are going to be in the state. They haven't thought about the permitting issues they're going to have if they want to rebuild some of these properties. I mean, there's an enormous to-do list about, if you're, I've been called the woke CEO. I was a CEO, and you got to plan ahead. You got to say, okay, well, this bad thing happened. Now let's figure out how it's not going to happen again. And here's the things we got to do to bring people's lives back to them and their houses back to them. They're not doing that. They're passing laws in Sacramento to keep Trump out of the state.
You know what's scary is brought up on my program yesterday, that Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, was second in line to become the vice president because Joe Biden had said he was going to choose a black woman to be the VP. And because of that, he had a woman of color, and he said he was going to choose a woman. I take that back. And Klobuchar in Minnesota was kind of seen as pro-police, and you couldn't have that during the BLM. And so Karen Bass's name came up, and Kamala Harris's name came up, and they figured Kamala Harris had probably a better chance of securing some support there, and she did. But Karen Bass's name was on the short list for VP for Joe Biden.
Well, how many trips has she made to Africa during her term as mayor? She made a commitment that she's been a long-time advocate for, rights in Africa, which I suppose is fine. But if you're mayor of Los Angeles, you've got a little higher priority. I think she's been there 6 or 7 times. And of course, she left town. I mean, the warning signals were flashing, not just red, but whatever, red squared 10 times. I mean, the winds, which always happen, they had a high alert on the winds. They knew that they had almost no rainfall this year. The tinderbox conditions were set at 10, and she leaves town. And just on that basis alone, the Los Angeles voters ought to throw her out of office. You can only imagine what she would have been like as our borders are.
Golly, jeez. Talk about the stupidity of man that caused the disaster, this act of God, if you will, fire to become so bad in California. Not only did you have no backburning, the state board had stopped the backburning and prescribed burn a couple of months before, back in October. You had the underbrush and the floor of the forest that were not touched because it might upset the bunnies. You had the water not coming in because it might kill the smelt. We had to protect the smelt. And then, if I'm not mistaken, the California legislature actually basically basically put price controls on homeowners insurance, and they couldn't change the rates according to what their risk. And that's why the insurance company started to pull out back in October.
Well, that's a huge problem. I mean, State Farm left the state, Palisades in specific, I think just 3 or 4 months ago, some
October.
1,600 homes they pulled coverage on. And the issue is the state insurance commission is, their job is three things: keep insurance companies solvent or make sure they're solvent, price management so people can afford insurance, and the other one escapes me right now. It has to do with fairness for making sure availability of insurance to everyone. Well, can't count on the solvency question, but they utterly failed on the other two. And what's happened is, because they've artificially kept insurance rates low, they blew the prices of this Los Angeles real estate sky high. And so the affordability, the low insurance rates are part of the reason prices are so high. If they do things based on, insurance companies say, okay, what's the probability of something? Is it 1 in 1,000 years, or is it 1 in 20? Well, in Los Angeles wildfires, it's about 1 in 20. And you could say insurance rates on $1 million, let's say $10 million home, could be $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year if the insurance companies are properly pricing that. That risk is still going to exist. And then you put yourself in a position of a mortgage lender. Without the proper insurance place, you're not going to have any mortgage money available for people to come in. And then let's talk about construction costs. With all the regulations in California and the lack of building in the last few years, they don't have enough contractors to rebuild all this. So, as I say, looking out through the windshield as opposed to the rear view mirror about what happened, they got some heavy lifting to do, and they need some very effective executives to be in charge to make that stuff happen.
I'm not sure they have that, because their executives so far still proven to be anti-Trump. In the middle of a fire, they're allocating $50 million to keep Trump out of the state, rather than that $50 million maybe could be going to help the people.
Well, did you see the interview with the head of the Water Commission in Los Angeles?
No.
She, of course, was interviewed at length in a podcast saying her primary job, most important thing for her, is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making that a part of the culture of the water department. And there was a fairly long podcast, and nowhere in that podcast did she talk about a responsibility to do things like keep the reservoirs full. And the other thing is that we don't talk about it much. The pipes in Los Angeles have pretty much worn out. I mean, they're 60, 70, 80 years old. And so the infrastructure of the water system in Los Angeles has been a real problem, and people who know about that sort of thing knew it, and they didn't do anything about it. And of course, she's I guess the DEI. It's not a question. The DEI, we all know the problems with that. You need to hire on merit, but you can have some bit of that in your strategic plan, but it can't be number 1, 2, and 3. Somewhere in there, you've got to have your primary mission. And I think all across the agencies in California, that stopped happening. Of course, it also stopped happening at the federal level with Biden as president, but that's a topic for another day, I suppose.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. We obviously, the ineptness of Karen Bass, all the bureaucrats in California that, in my estimation, have ash on their hands because of this fire, because of their behavior. Let me ask you, is there any hope? I mean, you mentioned we're going to have thousands of people that aren't going to be able to afford the rebuild. They lost their insurance. They're going to have to sell. I mean, they're going to have people want to buy the land. Maybe the homeless going to move in on it. The landscape of that area of California is going to totally change because of these policies. I mean, they have really altered the landscape and the population centers there.
Well, and we haven't even talked about the California Coastal Commission. Part of the fires spread to Malibu and the hills above Malibu, and California Coastal Commission has almost I think it was enacted through a direct voter referendum, and it has no legislative controls on it. And its main mission has been keep people from doing anything along the coastline. Getting the permits to rebuild in Malibu, I think, will be next to impossible unless they radically change that system. And if you add up all the different things, the permitting, the construction, the lack of insurance financing, the lack of insurance coverage, the lack of mortgage financing. It could be 10 years before we see anything that resembles civilization on the thousands of acres that were burned to the ground. And also what I think will happen is we've forgotten mudslides. And a lot of this, once you take away the ground cover in the houses, it's become even more susceptible to mudslides. So people could lose their lots entirely. I can't think of something like 9/11 maybe, but that was a very specific thing and contained. This is just widespread incompetence, and what that's going to look like, what California, what Los Angeles is going to look like because of this, we don't know. But it's going to be a dramatic change in the landscape, but also the way people live and think about their government.
The definition of insanity we've all heard is to continue to do the same thing you've been doing, and that's the definition of insanity, and expect different results. Do you sense that California is going to say, maybe we need better leadership, maybe we need different executives at the top, or are they going to continue in the world of insanity?
Well, I think I've alluded to that earlier. I think a lot of the people who would be leaders there, who could come in and ride to the rescue and get voter support, I don't know whether they're still in California. There may be. I mean, there's a lot of very talented people, wealthy people who want to pull together. I think in particular, well, it's not Los Angeles, the venture capital community up north near San Francisco has got, trillions of dollars of net worth that they could help use to not only rebuild, but more importantly, get the right people elected, because they've got a big stake in the government. And, one of the interesting sidebars of the Trump administration is a lot of that venture capital talent is now down in Mar-a-Lago, attracted by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. David Sachs, big VC there, is working with Trump. So they're philosophically aligned with what you and I think ought to be accomplished. And I think if California lets that talent go to work in solving its problems, they've got a shot. But I'm always stunned at how wrong-headed people vote, and there's an awful lot of white guilt vote in California, and I'm not sure whether that's going to be enough to offset the blunders that have been made.
Does this forever put up in flames the hope of Gavin Newsom running for president?
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. Did you see his interviews in the last couple of days? I mean, his body language. I mean, he's doing that. I mean, he's absolutely, and talk about word salad. I think he called up Kamala and said, "Kamala, I have a lesson in how to say nothing." And he's blaming everyone else. And alluding to something I said earlier, there's a time for a leader to say, okay, this has happened. These are the things we got to do. These are the resources we need. We need to work with the federal government. We need people to pull together. We need our insurance commission to start thinking seriously about how we get all this insured. Coastal Commission, we got to cause that to stand down. There's a very interesting to-do list that an effective leader could help bring about. Gavin Newsom's not mentioned anything about that, except that this wasn't his fault.
I saw the lady that came after him. He was walking around, said he was trying to get cell phone signal, and she went running up to him, and she's like, my daughter's school just burned. What are you going to do about it? And he says, I'm on the phone with the president. And he wasn't. He was trying. Then he said, well, I'm trying to get a signal to call the president. So he just lie after lie after lie, anything to try to, hey, lady, I can't talk to you. When I'm watching that going, man, this is a great opportunity for you to humanize yourself and say, ma'am, I'm trying to get hold of the president, but tell me what happened. Let's talk about this. And just embrace her. But instead, he kept his phone like, I've got to, hurry up, woman. I've got to talk to the president. As if the president was going to do something in that moment. That woman had an immediate need. That just showed a lack of leadership in my estimation.
Well, yeah, and Gavin, take your hands out of your pockets. I mean, get active, show a little better body language than what you've been doing. Yeah, he flat out lied to her. She was on Fox I think the next night, and wasn't aware that he lied to her, and it was egregious, and so he's been caught on camera lying to somebody, which is not surprising. He does it all the time.
Talk about the Bill Walton Show. You're known as the Unwoke CEO. You also have the Resolute Protector Foundation. Tell us all about it.
Well, the show is basically a long form interview show dealing with a lot of the things we're talking about right now. The Resolute Protector exists, it's a 501c3, and the show's operated by that. And, we're working to help other organizations and media companies like ours to create things and be successful. And, the main focus has been the show up until recently. And now I'm out doing things like this, trying to get a little more of what we think to be true out there when in talking with guys like you. And you're you're very good at what you do. I enjoy this.
Well, thank you. We just started about 3 weeks ago when I got canned from the iHeart Kingdom. So we're trying to do what you do. We're trying to build up our own little kingdom, or else I'm going to be a greeter at Walmart here real soon. So hopefully,
well, the problem you're going to find is keeping up with all the social media platforms and all the posts and all the self-promotion. You're probably like me. I like doing the show, but I'm not so good at promotion.
Yeah.
And so that's half the job now. So
I'm learning. I'm trying to create reels. I feel like I'm a teenager or a college.
Yeah, reels.
Reels. You got to do the reels. I'm keeping real.
Yeah. What's a
I feel
reel?
like I should throw some gang signs or something.
Horizontals and verticals. And,
which app should I use, and how do you create a 10-second viral clip? All of this stuff. It's this is why we drink, or at least I drink.
I know. I me too. Give me a call sometime. I'll tell you all what not to do. I've done all that stuff.
I will reach out to you for sure. Let me ask you. This is a great question. If I can have you a couple more seconds. One of the comments that comes up here, and it's Jeff and Cassie. There we can on this platform we can get all of our comments up here. Newsom vows a Marshall Plan to suspend environmental red tape as per Fortune.com. If he does that, that would be fantastic. But if environmental red tape is causing a problem, why was it in place in the first place?
Well, that's a great question. And look, I'm a habitat and species guy. I've got 70 acres out here in Virginia on the side of the mountain, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and so we're all for habitat and species. But they've got this aversion to the private sector, and one of the things that California did, just let's do something basic. They always let sheep and cattle graze on state lands because that was a way to keep the land, the growth under control. They stopped that, and they stopped it because they had a hatred of the farmers and the cattlemen and the sheep raisers. And so, rolling back environmental is one thing, but their loathing of the private sector is another. And I don't see that changing. And then the other thing to keep in mind, we didn't talk about, is big picture. The left is degrowth. They don't believe in economic growth. They don't believe in the sort of productivity things that we've learned to do to make life better. And they fundamentally like plants and animals better than they do human beings. And so the cutting through their agenda, they're unlikely to want to do things to make life better for humans, because that has not been their agenda.
Obviously, the California government's going to be looking for help from the Congress. Is there anything Congress should be doing to make sure that, hey, we're going to help you, California, but here's the strings attached to this?
Well, I wouldn't give California a dime without not just strings, but lots of cables attached to the things they've got to change. This raises a very interesting question here, because not only California, but Florida, people have built homes in places where you really shouldn't build a home. And then the state government then artificially keeps insurance rates down. And they've got all these other aspects of protecting the homeowner that is now being called into high relief is a big problem. I don't think it's the federal government's responsibility in this case, since this was entirely 99% a man-made disaster, for us to swoop in with billions of dollars to bail them out without putting down a very clear list of things that they have to do to get that federal money. And so I'm for it, but Congress can't step up to say, oh, gee, this was a hurricane that couldn't have been avoided. This is an avoidable disaster. Yeah. And we ought to think of it that way. And these were reasons that happened that were bad decisions and bad people in place. And those are the changes that need to be made before I think the federal government should send them a dime.
Yeah. As I said, they have ash on their hands, and maybe you can say blood, but they have ash on their hands for sure. Gavin Newsom does, and that probably really affects his hairstyle. He gets in his hair gel. It's probably really messy to have so much ash floating around there. Bill Walton, if folks want to follow you and learn about the Bill Walton Show, the Unwoke CEO, how do they stay in contact with you?
That's easy. TheBillWaltonShow.com. We're on Substack, The Bill Walton Show. We're on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on all the major podcast platforms. It's our listening base, our viewer base is spread over 5, 7, or 8 different apps and platforms. So we're easy to find. And I don't know, you're not in LA, you're in Mountain State, Colorado. But I'd met him a couple of times. The basketball player, Bill Walton, died a couple of years ago, and I'm a lot easier to find with him gone.
Yeah. I told somebody yesterday I had Bill Walton on the show. He said, "How is that?" And he said, "Is it a seance?" I said, "No, a different Bill Walton." So he wasn't quite sure. Bill Walton, the Bill Walton Show. Let's do it again, my friend. We'll continue the conversation. Thank you very much. The Bill Walton Show. Bill Walton, a great guy, and that's fun. I did. My friend Ron said, you have Bill Walton on the show. How's that possible? All right, good to have you here. Let's reset the table if we can. It's Tuesday, the 14th day of January, live from the House of Lakey. It's the stream. Glad to have you all here. Some of the big news stories out there, but first of all, let me give you one of the big news stories does bring us to the next question. Special Counsel Weiss, who was investigating Hunter Biden for many, many years, put out a report last night wrapping up his investigation of Hunter Biden, and his report basically details years of tax evasions, and he blasts what he called a gratuitous pardon by Daddy Biden, Demented Joe. He says that's gratuitous and not very happy about it, and he says it was also unfair and wrong for him to criticize the Justice Department, and the Justice Department gets criticized and yet called evil for prosecuting and looking at Hunter Biden, and yet if Joe Biden really believed that, Demented Joe would have been able to come in, or Merrick Garland come in and fire someone from the Department of Justice, but that didn't happen. It just hyperbole that the left always calls you names and says nasty things in order to try to justify their wrong-headed positions, and that's basically what Special Counsel Weiss said as well. He said years of tax evasion, gratuitous pardon, and it's going to be interesting as Bill Walton and I were talking, what happens with these pardons, preemptive pardons? Is that constitutional? I believe Pam Bondi and the Attorney General are going to go to the Supreme Court. They're going to go through the court system and find out. We've got to get some kind of a parameter, because let me tell you, if you're going to do preemptive pardons, or you're going to be able to pardon, even let's say, and the question of the day is, who else do you think Joe Biden's going to pardon? Who is on your pardon bingo card? Let's say that he decides to pardon. A lot of folks say Liz Cheney. Well, Liz Cheney has, to my knowledge, not been charged with anything. She has not been found guilty in anything. And you do a preemptive pardon saying, hey, if they find you did anything wrong, then you're pardoned from it. Well, you play that out to the greatest extreme, and then you can be a president or somebody that says, you know what, I'm going to have this person kind of become my go-to, and they're going to, let's say, tinker with an election. Let's say tinker with the ballots. They're going to do something, but you know what, right before I leave office, I will pardon them, so that if it comes out that they did that, even on my behalf, I've already pardoned them and said, hey, anything they did during that time is pardonable. So it's a very dangerous precedent, and I hope that the Supreme Court will jump in here. But the question today, who else do you think will be pardoned? Let me read Jim says, you can see it on the screen, both active and preemptive pardons of the Epstein list. He thinks he'll preemptively pardon BLM national leadership, local organizers, FBI leadership that is leaving, any potential donors to his next fundraising endeavors, and probably every member out of his family to the third cousins. I think that's probably not far off. You think of Adam Schiff, possibly everyone on the January the 6th committee. Will Liz Cheney get a pardon? We do know, it's been talked about widely, that the January the 6th committee members who were formed wrongly under the rules of the Congress, they have already been destroying evidence. There's evidence that they, quote, use that has been destroyed. And is Liz Cheney and other members of that J6 committee going to get a pardon by Joe Biden? Who else is going to get it? I think his brother Jim is probably on the bingo card. We should really actually do a bingo card, and at Monday's event when we have the party at the cigar lounge, we should probably have play bingo and see who the pardons are. But we probably won't know that day. We'll probably know the next day, as that day the news coverage will be all about the inauguration. But it will come out who Joe Biden pardons. Who do you think it will be? Chat in your room, all of your rooms out there. Facebook, every Facebook platform has an opportunity to comment, and I'd love to hear from you. Who do you think Joe Biden will pardon? Let me go through some other. I mentioned the inauguration here. I'd love to. Yeah, who else will Joe? That's the question of the day. Inauguration. You hear the lineup is coming together. First of all, Carrie Underwood is going to sing "America the Beautiful" at the inauguration ceremony. Carrie Underwood is going to be on the stage. She says she's honored to be a part of this event. I don't know if they play or sing the national anthem. I'm not sure, but Carrie Underwood says she's singing "America the Beautiful." Another great story, I love this, is that the garbage truck. You know, Hillary paid $2 million for Oprah Winfrey, and Donald Trump put a sticker on a garbage truck, and that's going to be in the inauguration parade. They're bringing out the garbage truck for the inauguration parade. That's going to be good. Oh, and the village people. The village people, if you don't have the inaugurations work, and I've attended a few of them, there's not just one inaugural ball. You think the president comes out. There's many. Matter of fact, you have like 3 or 4 states come together. The Republican parties put a ball on because there's so many people there. And so there could be 10 balls. And then there's private balls. There's Republican balls. This is a Turning Point USA. They're having an inaugural ball of their own. So there's a lot of them. And you're an official ball if the president is going to make an appearance with Melania, do that little dance thing they do. Everybody thinks there's just like the inaugural ball. No, there's many inaugural balls. They're all over town. Well, at the Turning Point USA inaugural ball, they're having their own celebration. The village people are going to turn up and perform live. Of course, they'll probably sing YMCA as Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's actually going to go to the Turning Point USA ball as well. So that's a interesting turn. So the lineup is there. Somebody asked me yesterday, why aren't you going to the inauguration? I'm busy. I've got, if you ever are in the Cigar Palace, you will see invitations from the inaugurations, at least a couple of samplings of. I don't think I have one of the Bush inaugurations invitations up on the wall. I had my Trump inauguration in 2016, and I think it was in Africa. I don't remember. I couldn't go for that inauguration. I don't remember exactly why. Anyway, I'm not going to this one. I'll be doing the inauguration party with you, the plebes out there. We will be, the bourgeoisie are in Washington, D.C. for the inauguration. All right, there's a video clip I want to give you here. Newt Gingrich was asked by CBS if Donald Trump is going to block the next Einstein if he closes up the border. And this is, again, I want you to prepare your hearts. This is the framing of how they are going to this is the framing of how they're going to position the next few years. By closing up the border, you're going to probably kill Einstein. You're going to really do damage. So that was the framing of the thing. Again, illegal immigrants coming across our border, unvetted, unscreened, but you can't stop that, because if you do, you're going to stop the next Einstein. Here's what was said by Newt Gingrich on CBS Face the Nation.
You tell the stories of these individuals who immigrated to the U.S. and they were very accessible, people like Albert Einstein. When you look at Einstein and you look at Henry Kissinger, they were refugees to this country. Donald Trump set refugee admissions at very low levels first term. He's talking about blocking refugee admissions this term. Is that a mistake?
Well, I think we're going through a period of, frankly, reacting to an extraordinarily disastrous immigration policy. So you're going to have some twists and turns. In the long run, we do want to have an ability to allow legitimate refugees to come here. We also, and part of the reason Clist and I made this documentary for PBS, is we really believe strongly that illegal immigrants are a major contribution to America's success and to its exceptional nature. And we want to make sure that, as many Americans favor legal immigration as opposed to illegal immigration. It's very important to distinguish the two, and we want to strongly communicate that legal immigration in a variety of forms, refugees is one, another is various work permits, but we want people to be able to come to America if they do so legally.
That was but notice the question. He's going, and you hear that, and people don't know the truth of kind of the background of that. He's really going to limit the number of refugees allowed in the country. Well, you do realize all those people coming across our southern border are claiming refugee status. And they're not all refugees. A matter of fact, the laws on immigrants that want to be claimed refugee status under persecution, the international law on that is the first country you come across that's safe outside of your own country. That is the place where you declare your refugee status. You don't trek across half of a continent or half of a hemisphere and declare refugee status. That has never been acceptable. It's not acceptable anywhere in the world except right here in the United States. So, but the condescending stupidity of this woman saying, well, he's really going to limit the number of refugees. That's right, because we have 2 million, 3 million people that have come across in the last 4 years, and they've all declared themselves as refugees. Of course, you're going to limit that. But hey, there's a good point that if you're going to have illegal immigrants, I think a lot of us agree with legal immigration. I'm a big legal immigration fan. My son is a legal immigrant into the United States of America, and he became a United States citizen. There's a legal way to get here. And there's an illegal way to get here. And one of the illegal ways to do that is to have 1 million or so people come across and declare themselves as refugees. I love that comment that Rich has. I wonder how many Einsteins were killed by abortions. That's a thought, isn't it? You think the jackwagon host of CBS News ever thought that, hey, if you're really worried about Einsteins, maybe we shouldn't be killing millions of babies every year here in the United States of America? That's a great point, Rich. I think that's one of the best comments of the morning. I think that's a fantastic comment. How many Einsteins were killed by abortion, and is CBS News at all worried about that? But that's the kind of hyperbolic, stupid language you're going to get in the next 4 years as Donald Trump resumes the White House. They're going to basically, again, remember even Paul Ryan, who's a rhino, when he was a VP candidate for Mitch Romney, they always said he was going to push grandma off a cliff. They ran a commercial. Even they said that Mitt Romney was a murderer. He had killed people because of some investment firm he was a part of, and they lost their insurance or something. Whatever it was, they always will say something nasty about you. And what they're going to say about Donald Trump, they haven't learned a lesson. It's not working, and I think people start to see through it, is that he's going to kill Einstein. He doesn't want Einstein to be here. And that's, you can see the framing and the hyperbolic negative language that they want to use on this topic. All right, if you want to sound off, the question of the day is, who do you think Joe Biden will pardon? And here's another question, a sub-question. Is there anybody that you think that could be deserve a pardon? I think a lot of those members, Jack says, he says, I'm good with the Cheney Kissinger pardon. I bet you are. I'm not surprised by that. And I'm guessing, I would think the whole J6 committee. But it is documented and true that the evidence they have, if they had prosecuted that J6 committee properly, why are they destroying evidence right now? Now, here's what's going to be interesting. If he pardons the J6 committee, do you think that Liz Cheney had her fat ass in there shredding the papers herself? Do you think she was out there with bleach bit herself and hammers like Hillary Clinton was? Do you think that really happened? No, as staffers. And so I would not be surprised if these bourgeoisie, the Liz Cheney, who's more important than anybody else, the Kissingers, if they get a pardon, well, who performed the actual act? And or Kissinger, and is Liz Cheney going to let her staff go down in a blaze of glory of prosecution, or is Joe Biden going to find out all the names of people on Liz Cheney's staff and pardon all of them? Because if Liz Cheney destroyed evidence that maybe it could prove everything they said about J6 was true, or maybe it could prove they were lying. Why would you destroy evidence if it's true and honest evidence? And if Liz Cheney takes her fat ass down in a blaze of glory and there's a pardon issued to her, is she going to leave her staff high and dry? I would imagine Liz Cheney doesn't give much rat's care about anybody except Liz Cheney. That's my perception of Liz Cheney. Never met him. All right, I've got some others. The question of the day, who do you think Joe Biden will pardon? Is there anybody that deserves a pardon? Jack Wagoneer, he's like Jack Wagon. That's why he took the name. I've so love to hear that story. He says he's okay with that pardon. I'm not, but everybody's got an opinion, and we let everybody have an opinion here. My hat's a little crooked today. All right, let me play some more audio here. We went long with Bill Walton, and we got to get everybody out of class on time here today. Michael Cohen. Anybody remember Michael Cohen, Trump's old attorney, and then got prosecuted for doing some stupid stuff? And then he turned on Trump because he thought it was good in the media. Went to jail, ended up getting early release and home confinement because of the COVID shutdown of the prisons, and they wanted to get him out. But listen to this bizarre interview. He was on an interview with MSNBC. And he's very anti-Trump now, and he's afraid he's on an enemies list, which I don't know if I don't think there's an enemies list. There is no enemies list. But I want you to hear what he says. I'm going to kind of stop and start this thing because it's really bizarre that Michael Cohen, I think, doesn't. Something's not right in the guy's head. Listen to what he says. He's on MSNBC. I don't know the lady's name, Simone or something. She shaves her head. And I don't think she's sick. I think she just thinks that looks good. She got the cue ball head like a lot of men have, but she has it. Anyway, here we go. Michael Cohen on MSNBC. Listen to this bizarro stuff.
And so one more thing regarding the pardon. Yeah, I put in the application for a presidential pardon because I believe that Joe Biden has the same responsibility to me that he had to his own son.
Hey, hold on. Joe Biden, again, I said this earlier, I think a lot of us would probably say weren't surprised by Joe Biden pardoning his son. If any of us could pardon our son or daughter in a time of trouble, we would probably be happy to do that. If in most circumstances, we probably would be and take the heat for it, but we're parents before we're anything else. So, but Michael Cohen is begging, I guess he's applied for a pardon, written the White House for a pardon, and he says, Joe Biden, you have the same responsibility to me as you do your son. Well, that's a dumb argument. I don't think. And listen to the even the MSNBC commentator, who probably is probably may think he should get a pardon. Even the commentator here is a little confused by this claim. So Cohen says Joe Biden has the same responsibility to me as he does his own son.
And I would expect that the same exact pardon that he gave his son has to go to me and to anybody else that's on that enemies list, whether they want it or not. Because I assure you, solitary confinement where I did 51 days sucks.
Michael Cohen, I believe wholeheartedly that the solitary confinement was just a terrible experience for you. And I think your point about the enemies, the proverbial enemies list, right, is a good one. I wonder, have you heard anything back from the administration? It is my understanding that two things. The administration, one, is not going to give a pardon to anybody that doesn't want one. So folks who have prominently gone out and said, I do not want a pardon, the president is not going to issue a pardon to people that don't want one. But two,
they'll change their mind when they're sitting behind closed doors. That I can assure you, they're going to kick themselves in the backside for that one.
I think hindsight will always be 20/20. I guess my question is, have you heard from the Biden administration? And I am struck by your comparing yourself and Hunter Biden. And I wonder if, well, I'm going to just tell you, Michael Cohen, we're on national TV, we have a conversation. I don't necessarily think that's your best way to go get a pardon. I mean, Hunter Biden is the president's last surviving son. But your other point, why I do think is a strong one.
I'm somebody's son also, by the way.
Agreed. You are somebody's son. But, I mean, to be very clear, you're not the president's son. And he pardoned Hunter primarily because that is his son, I think. I did not ask the president this directly. I want to be very clear. But your point about the fact that there are many other people who are in the ire of the president-elect who could be in danger like yourself, I do think is a strong one.
And it is, and it's a reality. You have to take Donald Trump for his word. When he turns on, so far, everything that he said that he intends to do, he actually intends to do. And he has been doing it. One by one by one. Now, it may not all happen on day one, as he said, but ultimately he'll have 4 years plus with a whole group of individuals that are now going to be filling government positions in order to help him effectuate his.
All right, so they're all afraid of Donald Trump, that he has an enemies list or something. But Michael Cohen's going about getting a pardon by saying, hey, I'm like your son. I'm someone's son as well, Joe. And well, everyone in prison is someone's son, but that doesn't mean all of them get pardoned. By the way, the guy's already out of a thing, and he is a felon. And I'm guessing he would like to be pardoned so that he loses that felon status and all that's it. So the question today, who else do you think Joe Biden's going to pardon? Let me go through the list of who he's pardoned. December 1st, he pardoned his own son, Hunter, for federal crimes related to illegal gun possessions and tax laws. November of last year, he granted clemency to 3 Chinese citizens as part of an exchange deal. December the 12th, he commuted the sentence of 1,500 people and pardoned 39 other people for nonviolent offenses. This is described as the largest single-day act of clemency in modern history. 2 days before Christmas, he commuted the sentence of 37 of the 40 death row inmates, the life in prison for federals. 3 exceptions include members of people who committed terrorism. Who else do you think that Joe Biden will pardon? He doesn't have much shame, because in that prisoner swap that he talks about, in November, when he granted clemency to 3 Chinese citizens, one of the citizens that he pardoned or granted clemency to was a convicted child pornography offense. It was Shannon Jean, a Chinese national who was sentenced in 2022 to 97 months in prison for possessing over 47,000 child pornography images and videos. But he was not pardoned. They said he was not pardoned. He was sentenced, commuted. It was part of a prisoner swap. And so if Joe Biden is willing to pardon or commute the sentence of a child pornographer, then you have to say, I guess he knows no bounds. Who else do you think Joe Biden will pardon? You're welcome to jump in here on that topic of conversation. Who is on your your bingo card for Joe Biden pardons out there? Boy, we didn't get to a lot of our news. We got to get to the stolen meme section of the show. But let me play one more piece of video. This is Molly Hemingway talking about censorship. We've been talking about this a lot with the Meta people and Facebook, and saying they're going to get rid of some of the algorithms. And you have Juan Williams on, this is, I think, the 5 on Fox News. You have Juan Williams saying, there's nobody that likes the ruling of Mark Zuckerberg and his decision to get rid of censorship more than China and more than Russia. It really kind of bizarre thinking by Juan Williams, and I'm not sure he's right in the head half the time. He's saying that because Mark Zuckerberg is going to allow free speech and the community to fact check each other and to have an actual discourse of conversation with differing of opinions, that makes Russia and China happy because they can put out disinformation. Well, we already had a hell of a lot of disinformation by Dr. Fauci, and we were not allowed to refute it. Now we find out that the refuting of Dr. Fauci, he was misinformation. So I'll play the whole thing. This is just a little exchange. Then Molly Hemingway jumps in here, and Molly Hemingway jumps in, and she sets the record straight. This is Fox 5, and Molly Hemingway refuting the stupidity of Juan Williams. Go ahead.
Russians and the Chinese must be just celebrating. Great. They'll put out nonsense. So I think you think about the damage the internet has done to our children, to our...
The Russian and Chinese will put out nonsense. What has the federal government been putting out the last 4 years? A bunch of nonsense. What about Dr. Fauci? What's he been putting out? Joe Biden's been putting out nonsense, and it's been you couldn't refute it. You'd get shadow banned. And Juan Williams says, oh, my God, the Chinese and Russians are going to have their own disinformation campaign. Well, why don't they just join the federal government? The federal government's had it's just more the merrier, right? But the citizens, they can't have their own information. They can't do it. Okay, here's more of Juan Williams. Molly Hemingway is about to refute and smack his butt down. Here we go.
Lives. I just think they have misdirected. A lot of people are being fooled to think it's a censorship argument, when in reality, we need, in fact, some regulation of what is the wild, wild west on our computers.
So, in fact, Mark Zuckerberg said that what they're getting rid of is the left-wing so-called fact-checking enterprise in which left-wing groups censored speech and debate among conservatives. There will still be moderation, but it'll be done through free speech, through the free market of free speech, where users of these different platforms can themselves check facts and information. But it is interesting that people think that if you want to please Democrats, you engage in massive censorship of American speech and debate. And if you want to please Republicans, you embrace free speech. I think that explains a lot about the last election results.
I think Molly Hemingway is absolutely correct, and Juan Williams is absolutely wrong. He's afraid that the Russians and the Chinese will spread disinformation. Isn't he concerned now that conservatives and people that have different viewpoints can't spread information at all? He's more concerned that he's concerned about the Russians and the Chinese having access, but he's not concerned about his fellow citizens that get shadow banned for having a different opinion than him. Juan Williams, I know he's on the payroll, and he's not as bad as some, but he's a very strange guy. Just I wish Juan Williams was concerned about as concerned about my free speech and my ability to disseminate information as he was concerned that Russia and China are going to be able to disseminate information. Why aren't you concerned that I'm not able to disseminate information, Juan? That's what I have to say to you. All right, a couple of stories. We have to push some of this till tomorrow. The Pete Hegseth hearing is going on right now, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this comes about. A lot of questions, and he's answering the questions. And I know one of the cuts that they've already said at his opening statement, he said, President Trump doesn't start wars, he's ended wars, and that's proof is in the pudding. Let me read some comments. We went long in that first interview and kind of broke the flow of the show. But I'm still convinced that Juan Williams is a DEI hire and a liberal shill. Fox's News resident Al Sharpton. Juan's not as bad as Al, but I hear what you say. Is he just? He's just. They had to find a liberal, and it worked. That it was a liberal of color, and that works out. You know who's a DEI hire on Fox? And I'm not a commentator on Fox. We were affiliated with Fox News Radio, but just loosely. We just had their newscasts and access to their assets. Jessica Tarloff, I think that's a DEI hire. I don't think she's very intellectual. I don't think she knows how to do anything except espouse the talking points. And if you say Trump or you say Republican, she's got to take the opposite stand, as opposed to having a real thought out there. And there's people that can have a real thought and a difference of opinions. Jessica Tarloff, I think, is a DEI hire on the Fox News, and I guess there goes my Fox News career. But anytime she's on, I'm done. I cannot do it. There is nothing worse than I would probably rather listen to Hillary Clinton make a speech than Jessica Tarloff talk. And I believe she got the job because I think she's affiliated somehow with Geraldo. I think Geraldo brought her in. There's some connection there. I don't know what it is. All right. Who else is Joe Biden going to pardon? Roger says pardon Hillary for the murder of Epstein. It's going to be interesting, your friends. I would encourage you. I don't know if there's odds in Vegas, but it's going to be interesting to see who he does pardon. And what will it tell you that if he pardons the J6 committee? If he pardons Liz Cheney? Supposedly Liz Cheney wants a pardon. And I would say, Liz, why would you want a pardon if you didn't do anything wrong? If you have the documents, which you supposedly now have destroyed, if you have the documents that and all the evidence that everything you said and everything you did in that J6 committee was accurate and truthful, why wouldn't you want to prove yourself to be true as opposed to have a preemptive pardon? And why are you up there begging and groveling for a pardon? That it's an interesting question. Do you think Liz Cheney shall and will get a pardon? I'm not exactly sure of that. Let me give you this Denver story, and then I'm going to wrap. I got to do stolen memes here in just a second, but I got a text message on Friday or Saturday night from a friend, a longtime friend, high school friend. We stay in touch. Her and her family, her children and husband live in Virginia, but we stay in touch. And she's an American Airlines flight attendant, and she sent me a text message. She said, "This is awful. This is a veteran American Airlines flight attendant." And in a random attack in downtown Denver, she was on a layover in Denver. She was attacked and killed by a random dude that stabbed her. She died. She was a flight attendant for American Airlines for many, many years, and she died this weekend in Denver because the streets of Denver have become unsafe under Jared Polis and Mike Johnson. And all these people that have run the city of Denver have not done a good job, and it's become a really nasty place, a really unsafe place at times. You got to be very careful about where you're at. 16th Street Mall. At first they said 5 Points, which is, but 5 Points has now been gentrified. So it was sitting near 16th Street Mall. She died. The same guy attacked another person that died. And there were 2 injured, 1 killed, and now there's 2 dead, and I believe 1 injured because the other person has died at the hospital. Let me ask you, if you're in Colorado, what the heck has happened to Denver, Colorado, except that it has gone like San Francisco. It has gone like Los Angeles. It has been run by radical leftists that cared more about their policies and criminals than they did the actual people and law-abiding citizens. And the guy they've arrested in this thing, producer Chad and I were talking in the pre-show about 7:30 this morning. This guy's got a rap sheet of felonies and assaults, and he's all part of this liberal craziness that Jared Polis and Democrats all across America, Gavin Newsom, has said that we can't keep these guys incarcerated forever. And so they let him out, trying to be nice to the criminal, and in letting him out, they got 2 people killed this weekend in Denver. There's another crazy story Remember the Venezuelan gangs became a national story about Aurora, Colorado taking over an apartment complex? And our governor here in the state of Colorado had said that they don't exist. They gaslit. This is not a Venezuelan gang. They're not running this apartment complex. Well, our governor here is as big a buffoon and liar as Jared Polis is, as Gavin Newsom is. Again, if you're out there in Never Land across America and you hear that Jared Polis, former governor, he's got 2 more years to serve. If you hear he's running for president, you should run as far away from him as possible, because he's an ugly version and a fat version of Gavin Newsom. It's that inept. I mean, he's a tubby, bald Gavin Newsom. He covets the hairline of Gavin Newsom, but who doesn't? I covet the hairline of Gavin Newsom. I can't judge. But yeah, Jared Polis is, they say Hollywood, Washington, D.C. is Hollywood for ugly people. Yeah, Jared Polis is I'm not being tacky, am I? I am? Okay, I won't be tagged. You get the idea. But Jared Polis said, hey, there's nothing to see here in Aurora. Even the mayor of Aurora, his name is Mike Kaufman, he said there's nothing to see here. And then right before Christmas, they found out in the same apartment complex, they found these gang members had held people hostage, and they were torturing them because they thought they had some security cameras and some footage of them doing nefarious things. Well, anyway, finally, they did the investigation, and the suspected members are now going to they're now being charged as gang members of Tren de Aragua. So what Governor Polis in Colorado said, and Mike Kaufman said, and then Donald Trump flew to town and did a rally in Aurora right before the campaign, and he rallied and said he's going to talk about the deportation of these criminal illegals. Is going to be called Operation Aurora. Well, remember when Jared Polis, the mayor, and Mike Kaufman all said there were no gang members running this apartment complex? Charges have now been officially filed. You were lied to in the state of Colorado by Jared Polis, and you were lied to by Mike Kaufman for a period of time. Mike Kaufman seems to have reversed his ways, and now he's saying there are gang members. But Donald Trump was once again right. The national media, Jared Polis all said he's making a big deal. Aurora's not run by gangs. Well, they just charged a bunch of them with criminal elements and criminal behavior. I see a comment here, and let me blow this up so I can see it. Mayor Johnson was heckled in his press conference last night. It was you can watch it on X. F you, Mayor. It's Democrats that did this. We're going to find that. We'll find that and see if we can find it on X and get it here on the program tomorrow and talk about that. But again, it's funny to see. You see Gavin Newsom being exposed in California for his incompetence, and Karen Bass being exposed for not being the sharpest tool in the shed. And remember, Karen Bass was on the short list for Joe Biden to pick as a VP. He was on the short list. Amy Klobuchar, I think, was top. But Amy Klobuchar was a honky. She was a white woman. And because of that, she also, she had passed some laws and been supportive of some pro-police laws in Minnesota. So that disqualified her during the days of BLM. And so Karen Bass and Kamala Harris were the two left on the list to be the VP. You almost had Karen Bass as your VP. We'll try to find that, because what you're seeing here is you're seeing the exposure of stupidity and lies that Gavin Newsom and liberal policies have done in California. And I think what you're seeing with the murder of these people on the streets in Denver and their soft on crime policies, what you're seeing with the Aurora prosecutions of people that were in gangs, and the governor said they're not in gangs. What you're seeing is these Democrat politicians in Colorado, California, they have been lying to you. And it's on display, and we'll try to find that audio there. All right, let's wrap it up here. Let's go to the stolen memes section of the show, and I think this is the producer Chad. Whichever ones you put up, I'll just go with in the order that we have them. The stolen meme section. Anybody remember this? Kids today take a huge ass fancy water bottle to school, while we survived on a single sip from a germ-infested water fountain for the entire day. Anybody remember standing in line after recess for the water fountain? And sometimes your teacher would count to like 10 or 20 and you had to go. That's all the water we survived on. But now we're told hydrate. But that nasty water fountain, people, yeah, that's all we survived on, kids. And my son, he has water bottles that are this big. It's crazy how big the water bottles are, but we survived on that. Here's the Biden's policies going into the MAGA dump truck. And that was a breaking news story today, that the MAGA dump truck is a garbage truck is actually going to be rolled down the streets of Washington, D.C. in the inauguration parade. That's exciting. That's good. I like the meme. The Biden policies can go in the garbage truck and bye-bye. A couple more stolen memes here on the program. If you don't let athletes bet on games that they have the ability to influence, why do we allow Congress to invest in companies they regulate? Anybody got an answer for that one? Let that sink in. If athletes can't bet on games they have the ability to influence, why do members of Congress invest in companies that they get to regulate? That's a great question. And I got one more here for you. If Trump gets elected, I'm going to move to Canada. And Donald Trump says, I'm going to make Canada the 51st state. He's always, I'm telling you, this guy's the best troll you've ever seen. Just trying to make it the 51st state. And they can't move to Greenland now because polls in Greenland said they want to become a state. I'll talk about this tomorrow. There's actually a bill going through Congress about make Greenland great again. And they're going to try to give Trump the permission to negotiate a purchase outright of Greenland with Denmark. So, and the prime minister of Greenland says he wants to have that conversation as well. All right, a couple more of the final comments that you have here, and then we'll wrap it up, is who do you think Joe Biden's going to pardon? Who's on your pardon bingo card? Pardon Hillary for the murder of Epstein. That's possible. He already pardoned Hunter. Dick Cheney is going to be pardoned for shooting the lawyer Republican donor with a shotgun on a quail hunting trip back in 2006. Have the statute of limitations run out on that? I don't think Dick's got a thing to worry, but I think Liz Cheney's probably should. Well, supposedly she's begging for a pardon. She's actually begging for a pardon. All right, very quickly, my friends, I want to remind you that this is a good one. I wonder if he'll pardon Milley, the former joint chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Again, the question becomes, why would he pardon them? What crime does he think they will be prosecuted for? And I'm not sure about Milley, but destruction of evidence could be Liz Cheney's. And it's going to be interesting, as we were talking with Bill Walton earlier from the Bill Walton Show. It's going to be interesting to see if Pam Bondi goes in and says, lets the Supreme Court put some definition about what the intent should be on pardons, whether preemptive pardons, because again, the danger of that, if you know preemptive pardons are just without any charges being filed, you could then become a president, and as you become a president, you can have some people tinker with ballot box or tinker with this or tinker with that, and then as you leave office, you pardon them for any crime they committed in the last 10 years. You know what crime they committed it on your behalf, and yet you're going to pardon them, and that's all going to be good. And I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set, and we'll see if that makes it to the Supreme Court for some definition and some boundaries. All right, a couple of things. Don't forget, Monday, January the 20th, we're going to be broadcasting, podcasting, streamcasting, whatever you call it, at the Casbar Cigar Lounge in Lafayette, Colorado. If you're watching out of the Denver metro area, you're not in the Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, you're not in Colorado, that's in Lafayette. Is an enclave outside of Boulder, between Boulder and Denver, little suburb there. It's a pretty much a leftist enclave, but it's we're going to be there, conservatives there celebrating the joyous inauguration. It's a free event. It's going to be, the doors will open just before 8:00. We're going to do this show live on Monday. Cigars and celebration. If you like the cigars, if you don't like cigars, well, happy Mother's Day to you. No, if you don't like cigars, it's okay. But there will be cigars smoked, and it'll be a big celebration. It's going to be a fun time. And it's this coming Monday at this Casbar Cigar in Lafayette. And we're going to have the inauguration. It'll be on big screens. We're going to be doing the show. Producer Chad and I will be there. And it's going to be a great time. We'd love to have you come. And again, doors will open just before 8:00. And we look forward to that. Also, don't forget the Patreon page. We got a great, can we show the clip of the Patreon page? I think we got several people here, and we're over time anyway. But this is the Patreon page. This is an interview that dropped yesterday with Leighton Gray. He's an adjudicator and a lawyer in Florida. And I got several people that texted me and commented on the Patreon page, one or two on the Patreon page, that this was a fantastic bit of content with Leighton Gray. It really is. It's everything you wanted to know about Canada, Justin Trudeau. Did you know Justin Trudeau has not resigned as prime minister? It's a bombshell. It's in the actual Patreon page, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. It's behind a paywall. You can watch a 2-minute preview. And Leighton Gray explains that Justin Trudeau announced that he was going to have an intention to resign. But as of the time that we recorded that podcast, Justin Trudeau had not handed in to Parliament a resignation letter and formalizing it. He had only made an announcement, and Justin Trudeau, as prime minister, shut down the government and closed everything up until like March or April. And so he's still the prime minister right now. He's still the prime minister. He has announced an intent to resign, but as of the recording last week, and that dropped yesterday, he has not actually resigned. And he also talks about the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Mounties there in Canada. Not a lot of respect. Let's play just this is again. This is from the Patreon.com. It's the paid side. This is the free part of Lakey Unleashed. That's the paid side, and these are interviews that you got to see them. These are more long-form interviews, and I think several people commented about what great content this was yesterday about Canada and our interaction with Canada. And he thinks that because of Justin Trudeau, Canada possibly could be on the line of not being a country anymore. And there's several scenarios he thinks of. Okay, roll the audio, the video. This is Leighton Gray. Opposing the tyranny of government. Colorado our churches here fought against our governor, Jared Polis, and we wanted the Supreme Court that he was told you can't keep the churches closed. So the churches here fought back for the most part, I think. What's the state of the church in Canada?
Well, this is a great question. It affects me both personally and professionally, Jimmy, because I represented pastors in my home province of Alberta who were imprisoned during COVID because they refused to shut down their churches, and they even refused to accept bail conditions that would prevent them from doing fundamentally what Christian preachers do, and that is to spread and to preach the word of God, to spread the gospel. And the Canadian churches in Canada, the Christian church, has been very much under siege. Our prime minister said publicly in 2017 that Christians are the worst part of Canadian society. We've had over 100 Christian churches have been burned, razed to the ground since COVID, and so we have an atheistic culture that has been promoted by Justin Trudeau. Canada previously has been a very Christian country, just much like the United States. But during the Trudeau regime, this is one of the aspects of the legacy of being governed by a globalist government, is that it's fundamentally atheistic. It puts on the guise of secularism, but wokeism has become the institutional state religion in Canada, and Americans have been able to successfully reject that. In Canada, that's not so much the case. However, I can tell you anecdotally that the membership of Christian parishes in Canada is on the rise. As a Christian, I pridefully say we're 2,000 years undefeated. And it seems that everywhere the Christian church has been persecuted, it's risen. It's increased in popularity because people are in search of meaning, and that's where, as Christians, where we find meaning.
That was exclusive content. It's on the Patreon page, and it's a long interview. We didn't expect it to go that long, but I think everything you want to know about Canada, the state of Canada, Justin Trudeau, the damage he and his wokeism, and the ultimate damage that DEI does to a country, and hopefully we're starting to see the reversal of that here. But Justin Trudeau has basically destroyed Canada. He also goes back and talks about Pierre Trudeau, who was Justin's father back in the day, supposedly his father. There's a lot of speculation about that. Castro. So anyway, it's an interesting interview, and I'm telling you, it's worth it. A lot of people have messaged me, and one person or two people commented in the Patreon, but they said that's fantastic information. It's a long-form interview, everything you want to know about your northern neighbors of Canada. Or if you're in Canada, maybe you need to know what's happening in your country, because the media there, I'm not sure how complicit they are. It's patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Also, we are getting ready very soon to announce our next round of advertisers and start putting some advertising here on the program. We just started sending out our media kit, our marketing kit a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago officially. And then we had the holidays hit. And so we're just now kind of ramping up here. If you're a business owner or you're a business entrepreneur, you want to be a business owner, maybe you're just a person who wants to support the program, you can become a sponsor of Lakey Unleashed. You just send me an email at info@jimmylakey.com. Had somebody yesterday, a friend of the program, say, hey, could you send me your media kit? I've got some some people that are interested. They're out trying to get people for me. It's a good thing. And right now, producer Chad and I have a very expensive hobby. We are going to be announcing some advertisers very soon. We're just getting our ducks in a row and getting everything put together because we're brand new at this and we have the holiday season. The media kit's new. But by the way, did you know, I was looking at the media kit yesterday. Yeah, there's more high dollar if you want your name on this banner back here instead of my charity organization. We'll do that, and that's our studio sponsor, and only one person can do that. And it's you get exclusivity as a studio sponsor. There's nobody else. It's a good thing. That doesn't mean somebody in your business line, if you're a mechanic and you're up there, doesn't mean there can't be other mechanics that advertise. It just means they're not the studio sponsor. Only one. There's only one position available in the studio sponsor thing. And there's a level where I will endorse people, and if I like what they do, and I don't just endorse people lightly, if I like what they do, I will give an endorsement. It doesn't mean people in the field can't advertise somewhere else on the show. It just means I'm going to give my verbal endorsement to one, and people line it up, and it's a good. Anyway, there's one aspect. I mean, it's not that expensive. I mean, in the Founding Fathers package, we do about 20 shows, 22 shows a month. And there's one package that's pretty simple. It basically costs you $25 a show, and your sponsor and your business gets things. So don't say, well, I can't afford that. Listen, we have packages that range from big packages to small packages, and it's all about helping this stay free. And again, the Patreon page, you subscribe to that. That's how you can also support us. But to keep this free daily update going, we need sponsors and advertisers. So help us on the Patreon, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. As Joe Biden said, no joke. No joke. There's no joke. You got to support us there and advertise with us as well. And again, don't be thinking it's out of your price league, because there's advertising packages that are as little as $25 a show. That's we're do 20 shows a month, do the math, and there's some that are $100 a show. So you get the idea. It just depends on the level of exposure you want, but it all helps us support the program, and it all helps us keep the Lakey Unleashed daily update going and growing. All right, a couple of rules of order here. Don't forget, Monday we're going to be at the inauguration party at the Casbar Cigar, Lafayette, Colorado. Please plan to be there. And tomorrow we'll start doing RSVPs in the chat room. Let us know if you're going to be there. We have also a Facebook group. If you go to facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page, you can learn more about the event. Just click events on the facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. Learn more about the event. It shows a map, and you can also check in and say, yes, I want to go RSVP on that page, and even invite some friends on that page. You can do that. That's facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. Let's see, one more thing. What was I going to say? We've got another thing. The senators are questioning defense nominee Pete Hegseth right now. They're asking about organizations he's led. So far, there don't seem to be any bombshells. The hearings have been going about an hour, but they're doing direct questionings of him right now. Hegseth is holding up. He's not in tears. It looks like it's going to be okay. We shall see. Somebody says, any Boulder protesters, agitator presence expected at the party? No, they're going to be at therapy groups. I think they're going to be having therapy and therapy groups and cry sessions and things like that. We'll give them a safe space. A padded room is what they're going to get. All right. I wanted to remind you one more thing. Tomorrow morning, we're going to do RSVPs on the check-in there. And don't forget also to subscribe to Patreon. And also this week, another big news, the other podcast, The Critical Mission, there's an episode of that should be dropping sometime, I believe, this week, and that's an interview with me. I interview myself about my critical mission in life. That's going to be exciting. I know you'd love to hear more of me. Just say yes. Just say yes. Make me feel better. All right, one more thing. Studio sponsor. I want to do studio sponsor, but right now we put our charity up there, charity organization. I was talking yesterday to a couple of guys that happen to be on my board of directors. We were actually having a cigar together, and I said, boy, we're running a little short this month on our operations. So if you could throw us a couple of bones, we gave a lot of money away at Christmas time. A lot of things that happened right at the first of the year. And anyway, if you can help us out, we're going to be sending our next round of money to Africa in about 5 or 6 days. So anything you could do to help us, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.org. If you're not familiar, go to the website, check it out. We take care of vulnerable children. Many of them are orphans, and we send them to school, no cost. We provide them nutrition and meals. That's our main focus. Education is a ladder that a child can use to climb out of the pit of poverty. And literally, when I first met a lot of these kids several years ago, the younger ones didn't have clothes. It was a pretty bad situation. And we're transforming an area that's kind of an overlooked area in Rwanda. My son was adopted. Read the whole story. But I'm telling you, this month we could use a little bit of help. If you've helped us before, help us again this month. Maybe you want to set up a recurring donation to support Rivers Promise, even if it's $10 a month, $20 a month, just every month. And that all, it sounds, you say, well, that's not very much. Well, it makes a difference over time. Maybe you can do a bigger recurring donation. Maybe you just want to do it one time. Make it do that. But this month, we go to riverspromise.org, all tax deductible, and it'll count on your next year's tax return. So there you go, riverspromise.org. All right, I think we're out of time. I got a lot of topics we didn't get to this morning. Would you do me a favor, if you're on the YouTube this morning or you're on the Twitter, use the hashtag Unleashed on Twitter. So we have pretty good numbers off and on through Twitter this morning. As soon as we close down, this is going to stay in the news feed on Twitter, and I'd like you to share it, repost it, retweet it with a comment. Say, you got to check this out every Monday morning. You're an ambassador, you're deputized, and I want you to be a part of the deputization and the spreading of the word to keep the show growing and going. And you can help us do that by retweeting, resharing, and make comment about it. Don't just share it, but make a comment. Say, hey, you need to check this out. I really like listening to this. I plan my morning around it. This guy's real pretty to look at. Hey, don't forget, use the hashtag Lakey Unleashed. Twitter this morning. Good job. I appreciate you. But share it, like it, spread it, and yeah, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Good Lord willing, the creeks don't rise. And the good Lord allows us all to be here. I'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless. See ya. Peace. I'm out of here.